Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. The coalition government in Pakistan, led by Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, has had many successes not only on the foreign policy front but also in stabilizing the country's economy. And after the recent devastating floods, Pakistan had sensitized the international community, and the international community has also responded well, especially with the results which have been garnered by the Pakistan's climate diplomacy at the COP27, then the revival of the friendly relations with the major powers, including the US, Russia and other brotherly countries, as well as the revitalization of the CPACs. Certain tough decisions had to be taken in order to stabilize the economic outlook of the country at the same time as well. Now, certain good news are also coming. And in the latest development, Russia has decided to provide crude oil, petrol and diesel to Pakistan on discounted rates. State Minister for Petroleum Dr. Musaddiq Malik, in a press conference yesterday, said that our visit to Russia turned out to be more productive than expected, and Russia at the same time was very interested in the pipeline gas supplies to Pakistan. Also, simultaneously, Iran has also decided to donate 2 million pounds of LPG to Pakistan. And to ensure the food security after the kind of impact the recent devastating floods had, especially on the crops in Pakistan, Finance Minister Ishaq Dar has approved to import 450,000 tons of wheat from Russia on government-to-government basis as well. Talking especially regarding the oil and energy market internationally, the G7, EU and Australia have put a price cap on Russian seaborne oil over $60 per barrel, which is of course rejected by Russia, but it has come into effect since yesterday, Monday. Now, how significant these steps by the Pakistani government are, we'll be talking about that aspect, and what sort of dividends Russia attaches to these methods of cooperation between Russia and Pakistan, and how the price cap by the G7, EU and Australia is going to affect the global energy markets. And to talk more about this, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, who is a former Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum. Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, thank you very much for your time, for being on Views on News. We really appreciate that. And on Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb. He's former advisor, Ministry of Finance. Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, it's really wonderful to have you once again at the show. We really appreciate your time. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb. How important this particular step by the Pakistani authorities is in meeting the energy demand in the country when Russia has decided to give Pakistan petrol, diesel and crude oil at discounted rates?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's always my pleasure to be on PTV World. So let me start by saying that there are two issues that are of paramount importance to Pakistan. Number one, of course, to save dollars. Pakistan is in a severe dollar liquidity crunch, so any dollar saved is helpful. And number two, Pakistan is deficient on the imported energy. And, you know, we have reliance on not only RFO, petrol, diesel, crude oil, LNG. So our needs to import. Considering both these things, Russia has been supplying to India, China, and the European countries at a discounted price. That discounted price now, it's quite public. It is $60 currently that the EU and the G7 countries and Australia have set. And this almost translates into about 30% from the Brent price that is there today, which is about $84. So let's say if we are able to import all these products, and we are yet to know on the quantity, we are yet to know on the timing, we are yet to know the cargoes that will come in, but let's hope that they are substantive in nature. Just for viewers, Pakistan's import bill last year was $24 billion. Up to 4 months, Pakistan has now spent $7.5 billion in imports on petroleum products. So you
So,
may realize that
Dr.
this is
Khaqan, Najeeb, beg your pardon for the interruption. This particular step is going to curtail that oil import bill substantially as well. Do you agree?
so that's the whole idea, right? I mean, to curtail this bill so that we save on the dollars, and the difficulty that we are going through on the balance of payments challenge goes through without hurting Pakistan. Our whole ball game in the short run, you have to remember, is to curb imports. We cannot enhance exports in 1 year. So the whole focus right now is that somehow we are able to curtail our imports, and 30% of our imports are petroleum products. So now, we should have clarity how important it is to have crude or the other products on cheaper rates from Russia. Let's hope it's a substantive quantity. And then the other things that we must do ourselves, like conservation and other measures, that are also important, so that we can manage this petroleum products bill, at the same time have enough energy to run our industry, have domestic energy for the consumers when it's December and January, a difficult month,
Right, your point is well
winters
taken. Dr. Khaqan
across.
Najeeb, I'll bring in Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed in the discussion also. How significant is this step, do you think, in order to meet the energy demand in the country?
Well, I think it's it's a very vital development as far as Pakistan's energy needs are concerned. From the conventional sources that we used to import, because of the price, because of the enormity of the pressure on Pakistan foreign exchange, Pakistan may not be able to import the required amount of energy from the free market. And that would depress the economy further. That would actually create further pressure on our foreign exchange balance of payment. In any case, because of the Ukraine war, the energy battle lines have been drawn all over the world. And whatever energy was accessible to us from the Middle Eastern sources, African sources, that's all going to be sucked up by Europe. And if the winter happens to be very tough, Europe too would have a very difficult time ahead. So we should not look towards the conventional, traditional sources of finding energy, because the price would go very high. We would not be able to compete with the hungry European market. In that sense, the eastern sources like Russia, as you know, is one of the largest producers of crude oil. Russia, Saudi Arabia, and United States of America nearly are the largest producers. Russia has been supplying most of its energy, whether it be natural gas, whether it be LNG, whether it be crude oil, to the European market because of the distances, because of the ease of trade. But now that there are complications of trading energy sources with the European countries, so those Russian energy is available to other countries like Pakistan. The fact that Russia has agreed to supply us energy on discounted price, because they need market. They need those markets which can defy the ganging up against Russian energy supply in the European and American world. So because of that, there is a window available. And the second thing is the strategic considerations. Russia would like to have opening with Pakistan as far as energy trade is concerned. They have been very keen to bring a natural gas pipeline right up to Lahore, and that thing is still there on the papers. Hopefully it will come up. So at this point,
Dr. Gulfraz,
yes.
What I understand from your take, it is a sort of a win-win situation. It's not only the energy requirement from the Pakistani side, but the Russian side is also looking for new avenues, especially after the kind of row that is going on between Russia and the West also.
You know, the Russians are very savvy diplomats. They think very far, they think very deep. And they would not have developed these overtures, first at the gas pipeline, and now the willingness to sell oil and the products, whether it is the fuel oil, whether it's diesel, which we buy a lot, whether it's petrol or whether it's crude oil. They have agreed to sell us, and my hope is that although they would sell it as a discounted price, but they may also agree to developing an instrument in which we can have deferred payment to them. And if that happens, it will take away a lot of pressure from our economy and help the economic revival.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, how crucial is this decision by the Russians themselves in expanding and looking for new avenues to sell their energy mix in the world after the kind of row that is ongoing between the West and Russia?
So you've used the right word, right? Energy mix. So another thing that we must also talk about is that we've also discussed with them that we may want to buy some RLNG from Russia. So let's explain that for Pakistan. So Pakistan has long-term contracts of about 8 to 9 cargoes, but we still have about 3 to 4 cargoes that we imported on spot buying. Now, as Dr. Saab was also explaining, the spot rates have gone to such a high level. So let me explain to you. Our long-term cargo for one ship of LNG was costing us about $35 million. The spot cargo went more than $100 million, so about 3 to 4 times the price. So we stopped buying the spot ones. So now, when we spoke with the authorities in Russia, what they said that the state companies don't have capacity to supply LNG, but there are private concerns which may be able to fulfill this gap that we have about 3 to 4 cargoes. So it makes me happy that if we are able to do the spot buying from them, and then maybe at some decent rate when the prices are more feasible, have a long-term contract as well. So that's the second thing. The third thing, I think that's been ongoing, and here I put the onus on ourselves, has been the Russian help that we sought for setting up the north-south gas pipeline. That is to transport gas, to understand easily, from Karachi all the way to Punjab, where there is more usage. Where I say we are to be blamed on not pursuing it with the vigor that we should have, there was also discrepancy on the Russian side, because the company that was supposed to do it was sanctioned, and then we couldn't proceed with them. But now, I am hoping that when the Russian delegation comes on the 20th of January, there is some progress in this regard also.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, I'll add to this very pertinent point that you've just highlighted. The state minister has also said that since the Russians are very much interested in the gas line supplies to Pakistan, specifically talking about this Pakistan Stream North-South pipeline, he said that we had requested them for some flexibility because Pakistan has many constraints. So what sort of a flexibility do you think Pakistan looks forward to in this regard?
So flexibility, when you say, is, it will depend what kind of equity participation Pakistan has to do, whether we can do it on, build, own and transfer from Russia. There was an amount of GIDC, this is Gas Infrastructure Development Cess, that Pakistan collected in the name of helping set up these kinds of projects. So these are the three things that I would be looking for from our side, that how much of the GIDC can we spend. I understand that it's budgeted and spent every year, but some monies can be spared there. So the discussions must go on. If there is a model change that the authorities are now considering, moving away from equity participation to build, own and transfer. So let's see, what kind of agreement there we move on. But these are the three items that we should be looking for. And I'm hoping that we move forward, because in winters it becomes an issue to carry gas south, from south to north. And so let's hope that we can move. Another point I must bring to our viewers is that the government has also tried from Saudi Arabia and achieved $1.2 billion of deferred oil from them. So while we talk about Russia, we must not forget our conventional partners with whom we have long-term contracts and who have always come to our help. 1.2 billion means $100 million a month. There was talk of doubling this. I am not sure if that has happened, or we wait for His Royal Highness's visit for that to happen. If that were to happen and we were to go on $2.4 billion, that would, just imagine, save about $2.4 billion of payment that we have to do over the next 12 months and defer it over the next year. So these are all the chips that we have to put together to ensure that our balance of payments stays comfortable as we move in the next couple of months.
Right. Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, according to your understanding, what sort of a flexibility Pakistani authorities look forward to regarding that particular north-south pipeline with Russia?
Before that, I may dilate on a point that was brought out very ably by our friend there. As far as reliance on spot LNG is concerned during this coming winter, generally when the countries that have booked long-term contracts, and if the cargoes arrive and they do not need it, then that cargo comes into spot market. But as we look towards the coming winter, that's not going to happen, and therefore the spot market is going to be very, very difficult, very sellers friendly. When the spot market is going to be very difficult and sellers friendly, very expensive, you cannot arrive at the contracted LNG in a short time, particularly during the time when it is seller's market, and probably during that time, countries which have a strategic interest in selling fuel to Pakistan, they could perhaps come to our rescue, and we could have some understanding of some critical cargoes of LNG from Russia during this period. The other thing is that the crude oil that we may get on some deferred payment basis from Saudi Arabia, we are used to that crude oil, and we can also get some blending done to refine that crude oil. But now, as far as the crudes coming from Russia is concerned, I was talking previously of Saudi Arabia. Russians have crudes of all kinds. They also have light crude, they have heavy crude, they have crudes with impurities. And depending upon what crude suits our refineries, which is compatible with our refinery. But then there is also flexibility that if we get some crude from Russia on these discounted terms and maybe even deferred payments, and if it does not suit our refinery, then we still have flexibility. We can import small quantities of selected crudes from anywhere, Middle East, anywhere, and blend it to be able to make it compatible with. So the flexibilities exist. My own thinking was that this time that we have spent and wasted, that should have been done. At least the compatibility issues should have been done. That should have been sorted out. Which particular crude of Russia can our refineries handle? And if that be the case, which blending crude would be required? We should have made the arrangements. If that arrangement hasn't been made, I personally fear that a greater part of the winter would be gone before we would be able to refine.
Right, your point is well taken. Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, when we talk about this particular price cap that has been set by the G7, the EU and Australia, when it comes to Pakistan dealing with Russia in order to import its energy mix into Pakistan, does this particular price cap apply to that one as well?
So yes, generally you can see that this 30 to 40% that is being talked about price that Russia is selling to the countries outside even in the EU is actually emanating from this $60 price as well. So if you see the crude price today at about Brent is at about $84, you apply about a 30% and you come near $60. So this is the price that would be applicable to Pakistan, which I'm understanding is applicable to India and China, which have been big importers from Russia currently, and the same would apply. And that is a substantive price reduction and should help us curtail our import bill. But here I also take the liberty that the government can only do so much. And I must say that as people of Pakistan, we must severely think about conserving energy, whether that's curtailing our motor use, whether that's curtailing the kind of heating that we do, whether that's curtailing the kind of carpooling we can do, we're shutting our businesses when it becomes dark, moving to daylight savings. Of course, the government can spearhead this effort also, but the onus of doing this is largely on us. And there are estimates. I remember, setting an austerity plan while being in government, and at that time, we were showing substantive savings. So that's also something through your program that should convey to the people. That's habitually something that they should be doing, and of course, the government can always spearhead that effort as well.
So what reason do you associate with that, the kind of habitual usage by the consumers on a larger scale?
Because we are not used to carpooling. We are not used to doing our meetings online. We are not used to curtailing our travel. Look at the number of flights we still have between Karachi and UAE. We are not used to not doing our things in bulk. These are all the habits that we need to change. That we need to rethink. We are not used to ensuring that our air conditioners in summers run on 26, and instead of using heating, in Japan, they are telling their people that wear sweaters instead of putting on heaters. That's the severity of energy crisis that exists in the world. This kind of thing on the supply side, there is a certain amount that can be done. It is curtailing the demand, which will make a lot more difference as we move forward. Of course,
responsible use of
one thing.
You mean to say a more responsible use by the consumers at the same time? Also, Dr. Gulfraz, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, a number of points that I would would like to do a follow-up. First of all, my own understanding is that this $60 cap is a European Union own determination for trade with the European Union countries, or the signatories, maybe Australia also. And it would not apply to the rest of the world. The second thing is that our own hope is that when Russians are going to discount oil to us, it would be lesser than $60. So in any case, we would be getting hopefully we'll be getting oil at below $60, but per se, $60 would not apply. Russia would not agree to $60 limit. They would agree to discounting us based upon bilateral understanding, but they would not respect the $60. So I don't think $60 would be a bar for us.
Do you think after the point that you've just made, I mean,
Yes.
$60 per barrel, they're not agreeing to that cap which has been set by EU
Yes.
and G7 in Australia. Is it viable for them to bilaterally deal under that price with a certain country?
You see, the point is that Russia would not like to internationalize that limit. Since we are not part of EU country and they are at a liberty to drop it below $60, so they may have a greater motivation to drop it below $60 to actually break that universality of the $60 European limit. That's number one. And the second thing is that conservation of energy is always very beneficial. Conservation at the individual level and at corporate level, at the government level, can probably save us about 20% of the energy misuse. But if you look at overall, Pakistan's energy consumption per capita is 1/5 of the average of the world. So we are not that high energy consuming countries where there is a great potential. You talk about flights. Look at the number of flights per capita basis. Per capita basis. It's minuscule with the rest of the world. So conservation by all means, as I said, the 20% saving of energy is possible. But the energy use is already very low, 1/5 of the average of the world. There was some other point that you wanted to...
Right. Let me take Dr. Khaqan Najeeb on this particular point. Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, do you agree with Dr. Gulfraz when Russia is not accepting the price cap which has been set by the G7, EU and Australia? Do you think there are chances it is going to deal bilaterally with any country under that price?
If I was to take the word of authorities on face value, so let's consider that. They're saying that the discussions that happened are on a 30 to 40% discount of the Brent price. Now, let's look at the Brent price. It's about $84. If I was to discount it 30%, that brings me closer to, $60. My own sense is that we are not going to tag it to $60. Dr. Saab is right in that sense. But when I see the discount that has been talked about in India as well, and I see the discount that the authorities in Pakistan have talked, because it's 30%, it brings us closer to the ballpark figure of $60. So that's something that they have in mind. If I have read this rightly, maybe Dr. Saab knows better. I think the cost of production in Russia is somewhere between $30 and $40. I was listening or reading a Bloomberg article on this. And if that is so, and if they have excess production to sell to us, a price in the ballpark of $60 plus minus whatever the bilateral agreement comes down to, would benefit both countries. They are still making profit. We are making cut on our import bills. So let's see. But I'm more keen to see the quantities that are agreed on 20th of January. I am more keen to see the ships that will start arriving every month. I'm more keen to see how quickly that happens. Because Pakistan's challenge, you must remember, is today. It is not tomorrow, it is today. Our shortage of dollars is today. So we are already coming into this relationship of importing from Russia in a delayed manner. We've thought of geostrategic issues more so when we should have thought about what suits us the most at
Right.
this time.
Dr.
What
Khaqan,
suits
Najeeb,
us
your
the
point
most-
is well taken. I'll have to take a very quick and a short break over here, and we'll resume the discussion from here. For that, stay tuned.
Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world.
Welcome back to Views on News. We are discussing that Russia has decided to give Pakistan petrol, diesel and crude oil on discounted rates. And we are joined in the studio by Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, former Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum. And on Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, former Advisor, Ministry of Finance. Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, you wanted to add something which Dr. Khaqan already was elaborating on.
Yes. The point I just want to dilate on was that Dr. Khaqan mentioned that if you discount 20 to 30%, the present price 84, it comes to near about $60. That is a coincidence. If the price goes to $95, it would not be 60. So since the oil price is fluctuating, changing, their $60 limit is constant. So it may vary by coincidence with them, it may coincide with that. But the point is that if Russia sells oil to any country other than EU at $60, they would be agreeing to this limit for the whole world. So that's why I'm saying that they may even drop it below 60.
So don't
but
you
would
think that
not
would be a problem
fix
for
it.
the Western countries, especially the G7, the EU and Australia, if Russia sells and brings down that price below $60 when it deals bilaterally with any country? Won't that be a question mark by those sides
Yeah,
on this policy?
Russia would like to burst that limit. You know, 2019-2020 budget, Russia budgeted $40 oil. So you may say that they have a higher cost of production, but they did on their own, and this was the statement of the Russian leaders, that they still will be able to carry their economy through by budgeting at $40 a barrel. So the point is that that's a country which has its own vision. It can take losses, it can make money. They are the largest energy seller in the world. And even though there may be present restrictions, but no one can get away from depending upon Russian energy sources in the long run.
Right, Dr. Gulfraz, your point is well taken. Dr. Khaqan, Najeeb, your point regarding this particular point, Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed has just raised. Don't you think it would be a huge question mark by G7 and other Western allies, including the EU, also Australia, if it sets a price below $60 per barrel when it comes to bilaterally dealing with any country?
It's like a double-edged sword, right, for the West. Think about it. If Russia sells it cheaper than $60, right, so they make less money. And the idea of this price cap is that Russia makes less money, is hurt because of the geopolitics or the strategic conflict that is going on in the world. So bilaterally, I think we can come to an agreement. Whether that's 30 or 35% or even nearly 40%, depending on give and take, and that would matter. But I think ballpark we understand the kind of discount from Brent that is possible, and let's hope it's under the 60. Bilaterally we can agree. I think the world will be all right with it, because Russia is of course making less than what the other sellers are making in the world. So that's the kind of thinking that they may have, that hurts the profits that Russia would have made if there was no conflict. So my thinking would be that that is possible. And so when we do diplomacy with Russia, the oil diplomacy with Russia, we may be cognizant of that to do it. And of course, it can depend. Maybe if you're doing the North-South gas pipeline, we are also buying our LNG, and it's like a whole huge package. We may be asking them for a better discount, or for more favorable terms, so as to say. And let's hope that one is able to do so. And that can be beneficial.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, when we talk specifically about this North-South gas pipeline, there was earlier a statement by the U.S. State Department spokesperson who said that we've been very clear that each country will have to make its own choices based on its own circumstances in terms of energy imports. He also, however, pointed out that the U.S. Department of Treasury had already issued a general license authorizing energy-related transactions with sanctioned Russian banks, so those payments could continue. So if such bilateral transactions happen between Russia and other countries, for that matter Pakistan in this case, so that wouldn't be a problem by those statements which have been given by the US State Department spokesperson.
So as I said, that this was a problem earlier. The company that we were dealing with, I remember distinctly, got sanctioned, and because the company was sanctioned, this whole process got delayed. So now we have to, sort out whether this payment will be in the Russian currency, whether this payment will be in dollars, whether this payment can be made directly to the Russians. These are the issues that we need to solve. We also need to solve what kind of equity participation we are going to do. We need to solve what kind of bank borrowing is needed. All these issues now must get solved if we have to use Russia to build this North-South gas pipeline. The pipeline is certainly a need for Pakistan. This talk has been going on with it. Now, of course, there are banking transactions happening with the West as well, even after the conflict in the region. So we should be able to do so. And if this was an agency which was sanctioned earlier, we can move with some other agency there. And I'm hoping that by January 20th, there is homework that is done. I always say that these visits sometimes are fruitful, but the homework that needs to be done before and after the visits actually bring home the cake to eat. And what I mean by that is that the follow-ups that are needed, the granular details that need
Right,
to be worked
right.
out, the financing that has to be arranged, the bank deals that need to be done, the MOUs that need to be signed. So all the follow-ups, I'm hoping are done by January 20th. And when they come on
That
20th
is
of
exactly
January
the
or
hope
on
being
that date,
expressed by State Minister Dr. Musaddiq Malik, that whatever he has put forth in the press yesterday, that would be agreed upon and signed in form of a concrete agreement when the intergovernmental delegation from Russia comes here in January. Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, regarding
Yes, please.
these statements by the US State Department spokesperson, that we've been very clear that each country will have to make its own choices based on its own circumstances in terms of energy imports. So Pakistan dealing with Russia shouldn't be a problem in that regard for the
yes.
West transit.
You know, the Americans know it very well that if Russian energy sources, oil and gas, were to be off the market, the world cannot survive. They know that. So they may have certain strategies. How should the countries deal with Russia? What kind of pressure they put on Russia, both economic as well as the money. But they cannot put Russian sources of energy out of the world market. They know it very well. So from that point of view, they will have to put some pressures where they need to or they where can, and they would allow the leeway to the countries concerned in order to meet the energy bill. Russian energy cannot be barred.
Right, Dr. Gulfraz, I mean, how do you think it is going to be beneficial for Russia when Dr. Khaqan Najeeb also mentioned in his take earlier that it is really important to consider what Russia gets out of it, considering the volume of the European market, the kind of energy supplies from Russia to European, and the kind of economic dividends and the revenue dividends which are associated with it. After that particular ban by the EU on the seaborne oil from Russia and now the new price cap, do you think even the new market avenues are going to be sufficient for the Russian oil producers and the authorities?
Well, first of all, the Russians have taken the calculated risk. The war which is currently being waged between the two of them, Russians believe that this war has been forced upon Russia by the Americans. They were tightening the noose around Russia by bringing the, pact countries closer and closer to the border, NATO countries. So from that point of view, it's not universally seen to be one-sided. Russia is not the only belligerent. They are responding to the pressure, according to their. So from their thinking point of view, they're ready to take calculated risk. There's a very large economy, and they have taken the calculation that if for some time the Russian energy trade gets hit maybe even by 50%, Russia can still survive to a point which is a time frame for dealing with Ukraine. So Russia is not going to be surprised.
Right. Dr. Khaqan, there is another development. Iran has decided to donate 2 million pounds of LPG to Pakistan, and the State Minister said that these 2 million pounds of liquefied petroleum gas, they are likely to arrive within the next 10 days, especially with the winter approaching. How crucial is this supply going to be for the consumers in meeting that demand, in the winter in particular?
So I'm really glad that you raised this point. Because I think there is a perception in Pakistan as if it's the sui gas, that comes to our house is supplied all over Pakistan and the whole of Pakistan survives on it. Actually, that perception is not correct. Only 28% of the households in Pakistan get the pipeline gas at home. And these are largely the more blessed people who are living in more developed or urban centers who are given that. The more deserving people are still using LPG, which is of course at a higher price, and to get LPG to them, and especially in a tough winter, instead of making them burn other things to pass this time, is a helpful development. And I also hear that they are making efforts, the companies, that LPG supply is increased in the country. And that's always a welcome development. In the coming years, Pakistan has to start thinking that Pakistan is running out of local gas. So let me explain this to you. In 2015, 2016, I remember whenever the IMF would ask me this figure, how much gas do you have locally? And I would offhand ask the Petroleum Ministry, but I would know the figure and it would be 4,000 mmcfd. Today, if that question is asked again, I think the right answer is hovering around 3,300 mmcfd, and we are losing about 8 to 10% of gas local reserves every year. Of course, we should do more exploration, and experts in this area can talk about it. But the fact of the matter is that we are surplus in electricity. Our needs would have for space heating, for using water heating, and for kitchens. If we talk a few years from today, we'll all largely have to move to electricity. That is the change that governments must be thinking. This is foresight or vision that governments have to give.
This
We
is an
ask that,
interesting point I'd like to see.
what are
Right, Dr.
structural
Khaqan,
changes
your
that
point is well
we-
taken. Unfortunately, we are short of time. I'll have to bring in Dr. Gulfraz on this one as well.
Very quickly, there's no doubt that Pakistan has a great need and demand for LPG, because those households which are not connected with pipeline are using LPG. But besides that, LPG and air mix is being created, and small pipeline network is being created which supplies the household with the running gas too. So LPG can be used in that sense. The other thing that you just mentioned about the gas production in the country, yes, our major gas fields are depleting and the gas production is going down. We do not see ready capacity of our geology to discover gas in the time frame in which we are depleting the gas. And therefore, our woes as far as shortage of gas is concerned would continue to increase as we meet next 5-10 years.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, another development, Finance Minister Ishaq Dar has approved the import of 450,000 tons of wheat, especially after Pakistan was hit by the devastating floods, and the sowing season this time around was also impacted. Now, how important this particular development is ensuring the food security in the coming months for Pakistan?
So one, there is a larger issue that we'll sometimes discuss, the productivity of the agriculture sector. But in the short run, it's unfortunate. We were already in a difficulty in balance of payments, and we were hit with these floods, which has hurt agriculture, especially in Sindh. And the wheat crop is now estimated to fall short. The cotton crop is estimated to fall short. We are importing both. It is a good thing that government should let the market work and import or import themselves, because wheat is staple food for our people, and price rise happens if there is even a perception of shortfall. So let's hope that the production coupled with the imports that we are doing are able to meet the country's demand in the coming months. But again, I feel sad that the two crops of wheat and cotton have been hurt. So has been rice, but wheat and cotton have been hurt the most.
Right, Dr. Gulfraz, Ahmed, your take on this. particular thing, the approval of import of wheat from Russia, 450,000 tons.
I think it's a very prudent step, because the food production world over has suffered serious setbacks. There are droughts in some countries, the floods in other countries, and the fertilizer, which used to come mostly from Russia and from Ukraine, is not available. The prices of fertilizer have gone up, the energy costs have gone up. So from that point of view, there's no doubt that we may not get the normal yield from our coming crops. And for that purpose, the government cannot take any risk. They should have at least one commodity like wheat, like sugar, like rice, which are our staple foods. At least there should be sufficient stocks.
Right. Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, former Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum, thank you very much for being on the show tonight. I really appreciate your time. And on Skype, we were joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, former advisor, Ministry of Finance. Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, thank you once again for your time for being on Views on News. Really appreciate that. From the entire discussion, what I understand is these are the steps and the measures which are being taken by the current government, and the kind of results they are yielding are really heartening, and the dividends over which to stabilize the country's economy would be seen very soon. Over this note, we come to the end of today's Views on News. Until the next one, take good care of yourselves.